Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. Today we have Tyler Lalicker, who will be sharing his story of breaking into cyber and sharing how he came from starting into cyber to becoming a founder. Tyler, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what got you into cyber.
Sure. I'd say probably a whole bunch of well-timed pieces of really good luck and smart people. That's probably the path, and that's probably familiar for a lot of people in cyber. I had a background in retail. I worked at Best Buy for quite some time, and I had fallen in love with working with data, even though I didn't really, when I was a teenager, want to do much with programming. I eventually found I could do some really cool things telling stories with data when I was working in the Best Buy Mid-Atlantic market, a region in which I believe that you might be a little familiar. We did some really, really cool dashboarding and some great business revenue intelligence. And I had a smart guy talk to me and say, "Hey, if you like doing this type of work, you might like cybersecurity. The mission's a little bit cooler." And so I followed that trail of breadcrumbs, and eventually another smart person was like, "Hey, we've got this thing called Splunk. You should learn about it. It's pretty cool. I think you might like it." That guy turned out to have been a former rocket scientist, lawyer, and then happened to be leading Splunk Pro services at an organization. Super, super smart guy, but he talked math and he really got me into the cyber world. And so it was off to the races from there. I had to relearn machine learning and data science to make it work for cyber because we don't really have a lot of good labels here. But
Yeah.
it was a journey that I really have loved quite a lot. And I kind of joke nowadays, I've been building the same product really for the last 10 years, building AI-driven automation in SecOps. It's just the tech has changed during that time.
Well, let's kind of take it back to your childhood to begin with, because that's kind of the journey I like to take our audience through. What got you into tech to begin with, and maybe got you into that data journey aspect of tech versus the other aspect of tech?
Well, how do I say this? I actually heavily rejected getting into programming. I was always interested in engineering. I had learned some on the electrical engineering side. I had learned a little bit about programming. I didn't like it when I was a teenager, but I really, really did enjoy optimization problems a lot, and engineering lends yourself to optimization problems. And so I kind of came across it in a way that almost felt unnatural because I rejected it for so long. It almost seemed inevitable that I was going to come back right to it. And so I had learned quite a bit about computer science and rejected it probably when I was like 16. And that came from a place of really liking video games, which I think a lot of people could relate to. Probably over optimizing of it too much in World of Warcraft played hours. Before that, various different games, but I really rejected it hard. The way that I actually came into it was, you know, five, maybe 4 or 5 years into my career in retail, the data side became something that I could optimize as a business problem. And so I really enjoyed solving the problem. The way that I ended up doing that was by learning engineering, by learning data science. So that it was only because it was a necessary thing to reach my objective that it kind of fell in the way. And then, as time went on, I started to really, really, really like it. But I rejected it for a very long time.
Let's talk about that transition now. You rejected it, you saw it as something that you could harness for yourself. How did you go about harnessing that as an opportunity or a superpower to help solve what you were looking to solve?
I think I was spending some time looking at a P&L and I was like, what truly needs to be optimized here? I was heading up services segment and I wanted to optimize the P&L and I was looking at the sort of sales pipeline from start to finish and looking at the actual serviceable pipeline and just identifying bottlenecks. And what I found is I could identify the physical bottlenecks. I could identify the bottlenecks in process by just watching in a lot of cases. But if I really wanted to get to root cause and optimize, I needed data to help me tell the story or at least show improvement over time. And so I had this kind of set of data that I could work with. And I started really digging in and figuring out how I can slice and do math to get me better outcomes. And along that way, at first I was like, oh, well, I don't need to like write SQL, right? I could just, do the math. But ultimately that ends up costing you a lot of extra time. So then yeah, learn how to write your SQL and then learn how to, do your visualizations. And then, step by step by step, eventually you're, learning the whole thing. At that time, and this is like, early 2010s, machine learning was quite popular, and there were a couple of algorithms that were useful. So I never was one of the mind that's just, let me just learn something just to learn it. I wanted to learn the algorithms that would be important and useful for my particular predictive analytics or seasonal timelines, things like that, figuring out how to slice and tell the story of data better. And so there's a good bit of learning incrementally along the way of just picking the right things out of the right courses and then applying it. Building blocks got me to and we did some cool stuff with the data to optimize service revenue, to optimize overall product revenue and profitability and conversion rate ultimately for these stores. It all actually came back to converging the process with what the people should do based on a customer story. And data just helped form the narrative and also tell the narrative of what worked really well. So we didn't spend a bunch of time toiling on worthless experiments, but we actually drove revenue, drove conversion, drove margin.
People process technology. That sounds very familiar. Where did I hear that before? How did that convert over to your love for cyber? Where did that happen in your career now?
This is gonna sound a little bit familiar. I was pulled into cybersecurity, kicking and screaming. I wanted to go to data science. Cyber seemed like not a great place to do it because the network is constantly changing, technology is constantly changing, behaviors are constantly changing, adversaries are constantly changing. So, normally you're thinking like, well, let me track something, label it, and then, cyber in a lot of cases is around anomaly detection or finding like distance function things to point out, hey, something weird, maybe bad is happening back then, at least. And that was not the same. So I had to relearn everything. At the time, it was like, oh, this is kind of just a stepping stone on my learning journey. I didn't really want to do it, but the people were cool. And it turns out that Splunk product is really good and you could build a lot of stuff on top of it. And it just became something that was incredibly fun. And then what seeped into me over time was actually the mission orientation of executing on security became, I don't want to say like intoxicating, but the promise of being able to do something that drives impact with a specific skill set. It's nice to know that you can make an impact in the world. And in security, I think you may get lost in it from time to time, but it's hard not to remember when an incident happens that everyone is on the same exact team and we're all fighting for the same cause. And that's why we take the call at 3 a.m. Experiencing that enough times, and especially like when I joined in the government, we had a whole bunch of things back to back. Probably like, Solar Winds was one of my favorites. I could tell you some stories about some things that algorithms caught. There's always almost a seasonal component of something big is going to happen.
Before you get there, what really want to help the audience understand is so you're in a data role and now you're looking and or you get pulled into a cyber role. How did that happen? Did you go seek for a cyber role? Did you go apply for a cyber role? Did one of your mentors pull you in to a project where you had a cyber role? How did that transformation happen?
Okay, so I mentioned the guy who's the rocket scientist and the lawyer who then went to go do Splunk for services, right? I was interested in potentially doing a security engineering position, essentially just doing like Splunk admin work. And I have a history of kind of making my own role in whatever job that I'm functionally in. This was just about the luckiest thing that could have ever happened to me. When I talked to him, he was like, hey, you know how to do some of this data science stuff. We've been hearing a lot about it. I know enough about it to be able to guide you. One of the program leads in security on that particular program was an econometrics guy. And so he also liked math. And then the SOC manager, she was willing to take a bet and say, okay, let's hire this guy as a security engineer and let's see what he can do from a data science perspective. So I got like basically an R&D role on a SOC, which I don't know how. I had no idea how lucky I was at the time, but I don't know how, looking back, I could have ever gotten so lucky at my first role in security to have gotten just such a cool opportunity.
That is that.
Yeah. It worked out incredibly well for me and also for SAIC, who I worked for at the time, because we went on to do some great stuff together and grow their security program and their footprint with some tech that we built. But luck, I don't even, it's like too good to be true. Yeah. No, someone took a big chance on me. That's, story for all three of those folks I mentioned.
So you happen now to be in the right place at the right time in a program where you're working on cool tech. It sounds like you're in the government space supporting now a SOC, and now you're in a role where you're learning more about security. How did your career continue to evolve? And now are you more strategic about your decisions, or does luck continue to play a factor?
I'd say sometime around 2019, I decided to really stick to cybersecurity. And since then, it's been a lot more strategic. But until that point, I kind of just was following the data science ML path because I saw so much promise in it. In terms of how that story went over those couple of years, learning cybersecurity and all of the tech stack around it is a bit like drinking from multiple fire hoses at once. And I tend to like that, but it is certainly jarring. And one of the things that's really challenging in a SOC is like, anytime that I want to kind of lean on a senior for assistance, I am ultimately taking them away from other work that they could be doing, ultimately dragging down the productivity of the team. As a person who's trying to amplify the capabilities of the team, I have to be very cognizant of that. And I was incredibly lucky once again to have Splunk because Splunk has audit trail on everything that people do. And so I realized I could go and talk to a bunch of introverted people about whatever so I could learn faster, or I could just watch what they do using the audit logs inside of the tool. I would actually start to piece together the story of what was happening and then go and reference and read and learn those tidbits of data, things that I needed to know without having to pull in operators until it's like, I don't understand why you did this. And I cannot find a reason for why you did this. And I'd like to know more. And sometimes people who are more privacy minded are like, why are you looking at my logs? I had a reputation for doing all of the data things. So I just wanted to extract whatever I could learn from you. And that was also very, very formative because you can look at process at scale to see how people are executing on things. You can put together run books off of those audit logs without ever looking at the documentation. And you can also see where people veer outside of this lines. And those are usually the most interesting points to learn from. So that process was all just kind of how I have always learned, contrastive examples, if you will. I feel like I've answered some of your question out of order.
No, but that's a super smart approach to take. I've coached people over the years to use informal interviews. You can ask them how to do things, but I've yet to say, hey, you could look at their audit logs to see how they've done something and then ask them why after as an approach to learning. So, yeah, that's going to be a new one for me. I'm going to take that with me from now on. Thanks, Tyler.
But can I tell you, okay. So that could be a very unsettling thing for people.
I
I'll
can understand that.
lean in charisma because you lean into curiosity and respect people's privacy if you're going to end up doing
Yes.
that. But at the same time, because I did that, I then could start showing value very quickly. So
Yeah.
take class of alert that represents 13% of alert volume, watch what SOC does, go build the actual automation functionality to go automate those particular steps, wrap it into the ETL. And now you've eradicated 8% of total workload and toil. It's like that sort
Yeah.
of work adds value and everyone sees it immediately. Oh, I love this dashboard. This is great. Show value if you're going to do it.
Or for example, take their audit history as to how they tackled the last incident and create a run book based on that. Say, hey, I created a run book based on the audit history from how you tackled the last incident. how would you tweak this to create a playbook for future run books? And maybe let's make this more generic and then go from there. But no, I see what you're putting down there, and I see the value on how it could be amplified and used in many ways. But I also see the privacy concern right away. Like, if some people could be like, well, "What are you doing? Spying on me?" I see both sides of the equation. So you're growing your automation skills, you're growing your way to save time and efficiency. Where does your career go from here?
Working on that security program was phenomenal. I built a whole bunch of algorithms. I basically understood there's like these 4 algorithms that are just super useful for cybersecurity based on different types of behaviors or effectively what happens upstream in detection land. And so I ended up rolling this product that would sit on top ultimately of Elastic and Splunk and other SIMs to do UEBA and anomaly detection so that we could start to really clear out noise. And this helped SASE scale the security service. They were really spawning their SOC as a service at that time. And so having this tech that could sit on top of any SIM stack, relatively speaking, like we had a couple different connectors to make that work. And having a machine learning approach that didn't require like training. I mentioned like labels aren't great. You really need distance functions and anomaly detection. But basically, I took this bag of tricks, rolled it into a product, and then helped scale their security service so that we could go and close additional federal and even state and local contracts to win in cyberspace. Like the landscape at the time in the 2018, 2019 era. So that ultimately was a product at the time was called Abnormal with capital M, capital L. And then someone came knocking on my door one day and said, "Hey, there's this other company called Abnormal." Can't No, that was we had to do some creative name changes. I was like, "No, no, no, guys, it's different. It's capital M, capital L. It's machine learning. It's not the same." They're like, "No, no, you gotta change it." And Abnormal was a pretty young company at that time. That legal team was really on their game.
So where did your career pivot from there?
I mentioned 2019 was really formative. I had to make or I didn't have to make a decision, but I ultimately made the decision to stick in cybersecurity. I liked the space, and I no longer was thinking of this as I'm continuing my learning journey in data science, and I now was thinking I'm a security engineer, and the way that I end up continuing to learn is just gonna be in this particular space. I'd really just stuck to it, as opposed to fooling around for many years, as I had been. From there I went off. I worked at SAC for some time. We had a whole bunch of different government programs, did some great open source machine learning algorithm work. Ultimately went over to Securonics for a bit when they were starting a new threat lab division before they got acquired by Vista. And then I've gone on to do a couple different cybersecurity engineering roles, primarily around being the data guy and detection engineering. The guy that actually I built that Abnormal product with, his name was Wu. He is the CEO today of Zaun. He and I built that product back then. He went off to Palantir. I went off and did my own journey. And then during this AI wave, like in 2021, I'll say, I was using language models to automate stuff at Securonics. And in 2022, I came up with this several different products that we ultimately commercialized that use language models. Now, this is back when you would load balance Ada and DaVinci models on like the GPT-3 models,
Mhm.
or like ChatGPT existed to because it was very expensive and the context windows were like really tiny. But I used that for a whole bunch of automation and I found it to be highly, highly useful to use these language models for security, but not not in the way that people think probably at the time. Is really great for like data normalization and for configuration management and like it had these specific use cases that could scale data science efforts.
Mhm.
So then Wu and I started talking again and we're like, where is the value of these language models going to lead to in the near future? And we ultimately decided that being able to search, being able to manage configurations at scale, and maybe some capture of business context was the play because of what LLMs were going to ultimately be able to do. We didn't really see it as a thing that was a panacea, but rather something that quite practically could solve some very important problems. And it would be most important to solve in multi tenant architectures for security service. And so that's why we started building Zaun together. So that's where my journey led to today.
So tell me about Zaun. I mean, for most, going out and founding a company, that's a huge leap. Like you're jumping out on your own. You're taking that leap of going away from having everything supported and funded by another company to doing it all on your own. What was that journey like for others that might be looking to do it themselves, and how has it been so far?
Yeah. So I think that the decision to do it is never a thing to take lightly, but I also think it's hard to look around at the technology that's available right now and think that there's ever been a better time to be an entrepreneur. It's certainly a massive leap, but I feel like in many ways it's easier today than it has ever been. So there's a bit of the technological tailwinds that assist there. In my particular case, I've got a wife who does well in making cybersecurity. She also is in cybersecurity.
Nice.
Yeah, some things that made that decision actually a lot easier from a tailwind perspective. The biggest thing is just having the conviction. Like I had been working on, AI and using these LLMs, and I saw a specific opportunity that we could make work really well. And then there's this other guy who I've also worked with really well, who also had the bug, who was like, no, 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 we should be doing this. And that conviction there ultimately led down this journey. And so if you've got all those tailwinds and you've got a technological wave like we're having, and you've also got strong conviction about something, I think it's bad not to strike or to at least try, right, to take a strike. Yeah, that one was not luck, I think. And it is like the formation of I guess it is luck because the technological tailwinds, Google did their attention is all you need paper in 2017, which preempted then this happened. So there's some luck for sure, but
Well, tell us what Zon is and what problem you're going out to solve and what makes you different than others out there.
sure. So we had quite a little bit of a journey where we started in one place and then pivoted and started another place and pivoted. And basically, this just tracks kind of like where ultimately we were going to find fit. We knew that the first thing that we were going to need to build was essentially what today is called MCP, but we actually made it locally. We wanted to solve for multi-tenant security services. We knew that because we thought huge value add for security service providers given this automation tech. It's going to be great for capturing business context and institutional knowledge. It's going to be
Mhm.
great at configuration management and search. All you need to do is figure out where to put the humans in the loop and let them basically audit the configurations at a really, really fast clip, and you're going to speed up security services. And
Mhm.
so, first thing we built was this thing that basically allowed us to work with any particular tool and apply pretty rigid security controls to it while letting an LLM work with it. And some of those security controls are things like you can let it query data, but you can't let it take an action, like an admin action or isolate post. So getting to a posture where we could apply those particular security controls and also scale out the number of different APIs we could bring in was the very first thing we focused on because we knew, marrying the whole tech stack of all the different tools that are available in cyber was, a big problem. We initially did that with a slightly different vision, but it's highly relevant to today. It's one of our best things is like we can just roll a new product integration we haven't seen before very, very fast.
Mhm.
The second thing was around basically increasing the speed at which people can approve things. So like if you've ever worked with a SOAR product before, you know that it can add a whole bunch of value and start to basically stamp out classes of work that no longer, need to be done before because you can use metal hardware to do what people had to do. That type of tool is incredible, does not scale very well. And so we then took that engine and put an autonomous SOAR engine together that had human review at the right steps to basically approve from detection all the way down into the full playbook. And we mapped everything to essentially MITRE defend, which once great, great framework to be able to bounce off of. Because with language models, you need to start with a strong corpus of value.
Absolutely.
It's great at it helped us do our validation. So, basically, we were able to go from automate detection engineering to automate runbook building and it was okay using MITRE Defend. And then overall, over time, both models got better and our harness got better to be able to fully automate that playbook build to where now it's like those run books are really, really high quality on first build and they continuously learn. So they're constantly like, if I switch from CrowdStrike to Sentinel-1, it can switch over with high confidence. It will switch over and it'll be really good. We built it so it can work with any SIM too, because, some of the first environments we were in were like Elastic or OpenSearch. And so, we started to see this value as we started to scale with different security service providers who in some cases are doing detection response, some cases are doing vulnerability management or compliance or other facets. But basically the AI SOAR capability is still core to today. And then we thought, okay, we need to go out and capture as much business context as we can because one of the hardest things with these tools and with any security tool is how do I do the continuous tuning? And some of those things will be ephemeral and some of those things will be forever. And being able to capture that at the right moment is challenging. So we built this platform that not only does this AI SOAR, that does the alerts and ticket management, allows you to do components of self-learning where I can use AI tools in tactical ways to get, information about, what it is I'm doing. But now I can also provide constant feedback about the environment. I can provide constant feedback about run books, and that information collects and is retained so that I don't have to tune alerts the way that I used to. I don't have to open a ticket and have someone in security engineering tune a run book. I can actually have this happen just on the fly for me as I'm just doing my operational duties. Context capture helped us, drive up quality and drive down false positives. Now, like when we use our tool and we compare it directly to a traditional SOC, just because of time constraints, right? If you have a SOC that's well resourced and you can get to these same numbers, right? But
Mhm.
we're bring on average about 4 to 5 times as much evidence for any investigation because we're doing more than just the basic lookups on things. We're doing full investigations on every alert, but we're also speeding up to the business context capture so that you can attain like only look at the 0.9% of alerts that matter while actually looking at all of the things with a deterministic runbook. So, anyways, now you can tell I'm a nerd. I love my tech, but answer the question.
Let's kind of take a step back. Like, who who's your target market fit for Zaun, and why are you targeting this market for your product?
Sure. So the best fit for our product is those who need not like a commodity MDR service, but a niche or a specialized or a bespoke service. Our tech is able to deliver really, really fast run books that help improve the overall security posture, the monitoring, and ultimately the controls that you can apply in an environment. Whether I'm a small micro MSP who wants to better service K through 12 and I need to capture that context or have run books that are aware specifically of key drive times at the beginning of the year, the end of the year, or data enclaves where they exist with student sensitive data. Being able to deliver that type of service in a personalized way has not historically been something we could do with a commodity MDR service because it has to be a general practice to scale the service arm. So
Mhm.
now we can actually deliver those stories, whether they be, those, small, like, wealth management office or law firms or schools like in those particular verticals. But we can also build these bespoke capabilities for teams too. We got a team that needed insider threat run books for DLP. Well, personalizing in business context and understanding the data enclave is a great use case for our tech to be plugged in. And we can also, as they grow on their maturity journey, a lot of times insider threat teams will start or insider risk teams will start from DLP, then they'll move to offboarding and sensitive access. And on their maturity journey, they're going to need continuous run books that are able to solve that problem and continue to capture that business context so that they can start to apply the right controls in the right places with the right business leaders. And so the story is essentially those who need niche or bespoke capabilities are those who get the most value, where commodity MDR, commodity detection and response in general is not going to necessarily be enough, like in these specialized markets. If that's a specific niche that you offer a service in, that's where this fits really well. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it definitely does. So it sounds like you can tweak and tune your product to a lot of niche markets and offer a very tailorized product almost like a white glove service that is tuned to their needs and learns and grows with them. Anything else you would like to add to that?
I don't know. I've always got some interesting opinions on where AI should be used and where it shouldn't be and what concerns me in the world. But I know from a timing perspective, maybe that would be better on a different call.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back and have those conversations. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll definitely have you back for sure.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you.